Hello, welcome to today's podcast with Oximio, global supply chain solutions provider for clinical trials. For those who haven't joined us before in our series with Oximio, we explore the innovations, logistics, and behind the scenes operations that keep clinical research moving forward. Today, we are tackling a crucial topic in the clinical trial landscape of comparator drug sourcing. If you've ever been part of the planning process or run a clinical trial, then you'll know how critical comparator drugs are. They're the foundation on which new treatments are measured, but behind every capsule, vial, or blister pack is a world of logistical challenges, regulatory hurdles, time-sensitive decisions, and budget constraints. My name's Alexander Love, and I'm a senior editor at Global Data. Joining me today from Oximio are Zaida Khan, who is Chief Commercial Officer. We also have Olga Vizgalova, who is Regional Director for Central Eastern Europe, and Nunzio Formasano, who is Key Account Manager. A warm welcome to you all.
Thank you, Alex. Good to be here.
Thank you, Alex.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So let's start with a quick explanation. Zaida, perhaps you can give us a quick overview of what comparator sourcing is and why it's such a pivotal part of a clinical trial, or successful clinical trial.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, absolutely. To actually begin with what is comparator sourcing, it always makes sense. So comparator sourcing as a definition refers to the process of identifying, selecting and procuring comparator products. And these products are usually benchmark or reference products, and they're used for research and development or regulatory submissions, especially in clinical trials or biosimilar development. Such drugs can be used in trials to compare the effects of new drugs against an existing standard of care or even a placebo. It's important to know that as part of comparator sourcing, if you don't get the right comparator for the study, it might not actually be accepted by regulators or even scientifically valid. And I think we'll come into that in the future, obviously evaluation through obviously some questions and with my colleagues as well. So obtaining these drugs isn't just a matter of placing an order also. It's about navigating the availability, compliance, documentation, logistics across global borders. It is strategic procurement and frequently is conducted under pressure. Any delay can jeopardize the timeline or integrity of a clinical study.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those challenges. Zaida, what in your experience are the biggest challenges that sponsors and CROs face in sourcing clinical trial comparator drugs?
There are many, but some which we've had experience in and some which come to my mind almost immediately. The first one would be availability, securing sufficient stock, especially for a high demand or restricted product. Manufacturers can limit access to their products, and certain high demand drugs, such as those used in oncology, can be difficult to obtain in the required quantities that are required for that particular clinical study. Following on from this, it's also regulatory complexity, navigating country-specific legislation and obtaining the correct documentation, such as GMP certificates, and these can vary from country to country. You would need import permits, quality documentation, and of course, as I've mentioned, adherence to the GMP practices can vary from product to product and country to country. One country, for example, might require different labeling, another might require a certificate analysis, and so on. So the documentation can vary from country to country. Then there's the logistics, ensuring the safe and temperature controlled delivery across international borders. The comparators obviously need to arrive in perfect condition. Trials often span multiple countries. Coordinating delivery is no small task. And that's why your logistic partner needs to be on top of all of these requirements that are needed if it is crossing borders. But by no means least, I suppose one of the challenges that comes to mind is cost. There can be fluctuations due to regional pricing, bulk requirements, and customs duties. Then, if you throw in the short expiry dates and storage regimes, the financials can get quite complicated and pricey quite quickly. So all of these factors, some of the ones that I've mentioned, there are probably many more, but these are probably the key factors that could delay a trial or even compromise patient safety if it's not managed properly.
All right, so we've all also heard about shortages, especially in oncology. We've seen widespread shortages of critical chemotherapy drugs in recent years. What impact do these have on trials? Nunzio, as someone who is customer facing, perhaps you could take this question.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Really great question. In our experience, there have been shortages, particularly in Europe and US. Drugs like, just to mention a few, pembrolizumab, carboplatin, and paclitaxel have been in short supply. That's devastating, not only for patient treatment, but also for trials that depend on consistency and continuity. Shortages can stall or derail a study entirely, having an effect across recruitment. And regarding the protocols, it may force changes, or it may even cause ethical concerns when alternative treatments are less effective. For trials already underway, it can mean pausing or modifying dosing, both of which have implications for data integrity and patient care. These shortages can also complicate comparator sourcing decisions, of course. While generics drugs may offer significant cost saving, ensuring a reliable and consistent supply during a shortage can be very, very challenging. Equally, relying solely on branded drugs, which might have a more stable supply chain in some instances, can be very costly, prohibitive for long-term trials. So the choice between using generic versus branded drugs can be a very balancing act between cost efficiency and perceived quality assurance. Regulatory guidelines and trial protocols will ultimately dictate the permissible options.
So, what steps can be taken to mitigate risk?
Yes, at Oximio, of course, contingency planning and robust risk strategies are absolutely essential. We look at all available options to mitigate risk, and that means considering everything from single versus multiple batch sourcing to central versus local or open market sourcing. Each approach has its own pros and cons, of course. For instance, with single batch sourcing, you might reduce variability in data and simplify logistics, potentially saving costs. But if something goes wrong with that single batch, you have got a big problem. Multiple batch sourcing, on the other hand, gives you more flexibility, which is great for avoiding disruptions. But it can introduce more data variability that may need to be accounted for. To finish, then there is the question of central versus local sourcing. If you source centrally, it can really streamline logistics and reduce overstocking, especially when import processes are straightforward. But for countries with complex regulations or lengthy import processes, local sourcing within each country might be the better play, even if it adds a bit more cost and complexity. And finally, the open market offers flexibility, but you have got to be very careful about counterfeit products or inconsistent batch quality. It's all about finding the right balance for each child's unique needs.
Okay, great. Thanks for such a detailed answer. Olga, I'd like to get your thoughts now. How does Oximio support global opportunities in comparator sourcing?
Thanks, Alex. Let me explain. As a business, we are fortunate to have a global footprint with our own locations and partner locations across Europe, the US, Latin America, APAC, and the Middle East. This means we can source both locally and internationally. Our cost efficiency comes from our regional procurement strategy. So we source from the most competitive markets, benchmark prices across borders, and negotiate based on volumes. With streamlined operations, we reduce PO to dispatch timelines and avoid unnecessary markups. We are able to provide bulk acquisition of high-value pharmaceuticals with direct access to oncology comparators. Our in-house experts manage documentation, licensing, and customs. We can act as importers of records and provide all the necessary documentation, such as COA, COC, and MSDS, etc. They are all available where stated for each product and they are essential for regulatory audits. Our full suite of services extends across logistics and distribution. We offer cold chain logistics from ambient to ultra-low temperatures, all this vital for sensitive therapies. Clinical trials often require local language labeling, and that is also something we can provide in addition to repackaging services from our regional warehouses.
That's impressive. And it sounds as though Oximio is not just a sourcing partner, but an integrated supply chain solution in itself.
Exactly, and this makes a huge difference when you are working against timelines, navigating shortages, and managing budgets.
Of course, I wanted to talk about oncology specifically. Why is it such a priority area, and what can Oximio do here? Zaida, would you like to answer this?
And it's a real critical question, and the response I think Nunzio has already sort of provided a bit of an overview in terms of shortages. But for oncology specifically, it is one of the largest and most urgent therapeutic areas in clinical research. The demand for drugs such as Keytruda, Avastin, Imnovid grows more and more, not only each week, but we've seen it in a daily manner as well. At Oximio, like Olga has indicated, we've got direct access to such medications. Because of our international presence, we can source them faster, in bulk, and at lower prices. So we can support trial sponsors with detailed regulatory documentation, the flexible quantities, and then tailor-made solutions for different requirements for their clinical supply chain requirements over shelf life and also batch specifications.
And you can achieve all of that without compromising on quality or compliance.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. The foundation of everything that we do here at Oximio is underlined by a very strong quality presence. And that's, the core of everything that we do.
Okay, great. So before we wrap things up for today's podcast, what would be your final message for sponsors, CROs, or CDMOs who are planning their next trial? Can I start with you, Nunzio?
Of course, I would simply say don't let sourcing become a bottleneck.
Okay, and how about you, Olga?
I would say it's our worldwide expertise and experience. We offer more than just product. We bring regulatory assurance, speed, and cost efficiency to the table.
Great. And finally, from yourself, Zaida, what would be your message?
I think I would echo both Nunzio and Olga's comments there. But all I can add is that the earlier you involve a specialist partner, such as Oximio, the smoother your clinical trial can run. It's really important when it comes to oncology, rare diseases, or global multi-country study sites, where you have global multi-country study sites, that where you know that your logistic and your specialist partner can be there to support you. And I feel that Oximio is definitely one of the specialist partners that can do that.
Well, thank you very much for providing your insights today to Nunzio, Olga, and Zaida. This was, as I said, really insightful into what it takes to secure comparators in today's clinical research environment. To our listeners, if you're planning a trial, facing supply chain issues, or want to benchmark your sourcing strategy, please reach out to the Oximio team. You can visit their website at oximio.com. Thank you again.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.